Hello everyone, welcome back. I have picked up a few books over the past couple of weeks, and I just thought that I would share them with you today. I'm going to start with the books that I bought furthest back and then move into the books that I bought yesterday. So, uh, here we go. The first book is one that I'm also in the middle of. I'm not really to the middle yet, but it is Resident Evil, The Umbrella Conspiracy by S.D. Perry. This is the first Resident Evil novel, so this would have been published back in '98. And I never got to play the first Resident Evil novels. I never got to play the first several Resident Evil games, so I think I came into Resident Evil, the game that takes place in Africa with Chris and Sheva, and was was Jill Valentine in that? Was she like the well, anyway, there's a whole storyline there. I came in there and then so I never got to play any of the games that came before that. And so I don't know how accurate this will be to the video game. From what I understand, this is a novelization of the first game. I'm not very far in. I like these a lot. I just read them. You don't have to. They're just fun. They're just enjoyable, and I really like the way S.D. Perry writes. I've read several of her books, and they've all entertained me very much. Um, so the next two really surprised me because I didn't expect to see them at all, and I certainly didn't expect to see them for their price. So they were both under $2. So the first is Carl Edward Wagner's Why Not You and I? And if you ever went looking for Carl Edward Wagner books, you will know that they are not easy to find, and when you find them, they are very expensive. So this was only $1.79. I this is I think just short stories. Yeah, this is all short stories, maybe a novella or something. I just I looked down and it was a dollar. I think it was $1.79 or $1.99, and I I kind of flipped out and just grabbed it, and I thought maybe that was a typo or something. Maybe sometimes they put the wrong label on these books. I just I think this is the first actual Carl Edward Wagner book I've ever had. Like I've only been able to read his stories in anthologies and that sort of thing, so that's really neat. Usually his books are 20, 30, $40, way more if you're on Amazon. I kind of feel I wonder if anybody else has noticed this, but it kind of seems like the paperbacks from hell era is starting to wane, at least where I live. I don't know if that's true on the internet or in other places, but it seems like these books are getting a little bit cheaper, a little bit easier to find. So that is nice. Um, because when I was a kid, you could find these everywhere, like everywhere, and they'd be like 50 cents, a dollar, 75 cents. And I wasn't really looking for them then, and I wasn't really paying attention to them then because they were everywhere. So I just bought the ones that I was interested in at the time. And, I got rid of them over time too. If they, I don't know, I'm just really glad. The next one I really didn't expect to find. I think this one was $1.79. And that kind of blew my mind. So it is Dark Gods by T.E.D. Klein. And T.E.D. Klein books are very hard to find. I think he only published three or four, maybe, something like that. These are all short stories and novellas. I think there's only four of them in this. I have had a T.E.D. Klein book before. It was it Ceremonies? I think it was Ceremonies, but it was in really, really bad shape. I found it at a yard sale or something. It was like a book somebody had pulled out of their attic, and I have only been able to read T.E.D. Klein. I never read the his book that I have. I think it's at my dad's house, actually. I would be interested to see if that is still there or if I have confused that with a Graham Masterton book. Because I also have Graham Masterton's uh, The Manitou, I think, and they have similar covers, but I do know that I had a T.E.D. Klein book before. I saw a hardcover of this about 2, 3 months ago. They wanted $40 for it, I think. And this is in not particularly good shape, so that's why it was so cheap, I would imagine. But it has a cracked spine, but it is very readable, and I I think that it will survive. Even if it doesn't, I can fix it somehow to survive. So I'm really happy about that. And I want to get to this really soon. After all the Westerns that I have been reading lately, I'm really, really in the mood for something different. And I really liked Klein's, I guess it would be a short story or maybe a novella. It was turned into a book. I believe it was turned into the ceremonies, the events at Poor Off Farm. I really enjoyed that. You can find that in a lot of anthologies. Um, and the next is, I just picked this up because I liked the cover and I liked the whatever the summary on the back. This is Vortex by John Land. So this is I guess it's like a science fiction action novel from the 80s, I think. This is Zebra Press, and they are not, I don't think Zebra exists anymore, but they were not particularly well known for having um, great literature or anything like that. In fact, a lot of the Zebra books I've read were so terrible, but some of them are really fun. So this is from 1984, and this is apparently about a nuclear war that starts, and there's three people who can save all of humanity. And let's see, if these bombs go off, they will rip a hole in our dimension of time and space, destroying all mankind in a vicious vortex of annihilation. Doesn't that sound like an interesting plot? I don't know. This was also $1 something. And the next book is John Gardner's The Resurrection. There were quite a few of Gardner's books on the clearance rack, so you can see it was only $1. And I looked for, I think is it Mickelson's Ghost or Michelson's Ghost? It's spelled in an interesting way. It's Mikelson. So I'm not entirely sure how you would go about pronouncing that. And I've wondered that for a while. That's the one I'm looking for. But this sounded interesting. This is about a man who finds out that he is dying and he takes his family back to his hometown. And I'm really actually looking forward to this. I almost started this the other day, but I started the Resident Evil novel instead. Uh, I have kind of a strange relationship with Gardner. Grendel was the first adult book I ever read, closely followed by, was it The Snows of Kilimanjaro by Hemingway, which I didn't really care for at that age. And I haven't reread that since. All I remember is there's a big game hunter in Africa who's dying and he's really mean to his wife. Uh, that's been 20 some odd years ago. That would have been in 2001 or 2002. I remember because I was in third grade when I got that box. And there's, it's easy to remember 2001 for perhaps obvious reasons. Um, but I'm really looking forward to this. And my point is that a lot of Gardner's books seem overdone to me. When I read the summaries of their plots on the back of the books, like for the Sunlight dialogues, for instance, it just seems like it'll be an overdone novel that I would not like. And I read his book, Freddie's book, last year, and I didn't understand what Gardner was trying to say to the audience because it's a book made up of two different storylines, and I guess I'm not smart enough to connect the original story with the story in Freddie's book, which is it's about a professor who goes to stay with another professor, and he has a son who's written a book, and they have a really strange relationship to each other, this professor and his son. And the book itself makes up the second half of the novel, and it's about nights in Sweden and the devil. And I was not, I don't know, I didn't know what Gardner was trying to tell me. So I'm a little bit wary of starting his other books, but I think that I will like this one. So the next book I got for PI July, Private Eye July, and I'm hoping to get to this. I don't know if I will. I wanted to take part in PI July last year, and I just didn't get around to it because all that I had was hard-boiled fiction from the 40s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, and I've never gotten along with hard-boiled fiction. I don't really understand it. Everybody in hard-boiled fiction is rude to each other all the time for no reason, and I just don't get it. Like, the main character will be like, "Excuse me, do you know the time?" And the guy will be like, "Screw you, pal, get lost." And it's okay. I don't understand it. But this is Lauren D. Estelman's Every Brilliant Eye. This is a contemporary PI novel from the 80s. So this is about a PI in July, a PI in Detroit, and his friend goes missing. His friend is a reporter for one of the local newspapers, and they both met in, I guess, in the Vietnam War. And I don't know. I thought that I would give it a try. I read the first 3 paragraphs of this in the store, and I really liked it, and I'm hoping to really enjoy this. I don't know how. I don't know how much I will be able to participate in PI July. The only other books that I have, I think I have a great big collection of detective stories, but they are mostly hard boiled, and like I said, it just doesn't really work for me. But we will see how that goes. The next is a DK Nature Guide to Rocks and Minerals by Monica Price and Kevin Walsh. And I have a few of these, not about rocks. That's why I got this one, because it's about rocks, and you can see most of mine are about jewels, gemstones, um, because one of the careers I always thought I would be really good at would be buying and selling jewelry and appraising jewelry. Uh, and I just really liked the rock pictures, and just wanted to get this. It was very cheap. All these books were very cheap, $1.59, $2, something like that. And anyway, I just I just thought that was neat. I also went ahead and picked up Alexander Pushkin's Eugene Onegin. I'm not entirely sure how you would pronounce Onegin exactly. It would depend on which letter the stress is on, I suppose. That's a big deal in Russian, which letter has the stress. And it is usually not the one that we think it would be in English. So um, I haven't really read very much Pushkin. I've read some of his poems. I've listened to some of his poems in English and Russian. I read a story of his. I think it was called The Carriage House or something, and it really reminded me of, like, it was very overwhelming to me in that 1800s sort of way. Um, it very much reminded me of, like, very plush drawing rooms, very plush drawing rooms, lots of velvet and uh, that sort of thing. Very powerful, like, perfumes and stuff. I don't know. And it was a really weird story too, about a guy who goes to a carriage house and he meets the father and the daughter, and then he comes back several years later, and the daughter has ran off with an army officer who's really unpleasant and really unkind to the father, and the daughter, just like, she's supposed to be a really good person, and she just ditches her father to go live with this army officer as, like, his mistress. I think they get married, I'm not sure, but they just completely cut the father off from their lives, and I didn't like it. I didn't like the plot. I didn't like that plot where that was supposed to be okay because she comes back later and, like, puts flowers on her father's grave. And it was like, why didn't they take him to live with them? I didn't understand it. I mean, I know that they were, like, living in sin and all that. It just didn't make sense. They could have gave him some money. I I don't know. I didn't get it. I didn't understand. I don't know. So anyway, I've wanted to try more Pushkin, I guess is what I'm trying to say, because I liked a lot of that story. I liked the writing of that story, which of course it was in translation. Um, but the story itself just left me cold. I don't know. It just I didn't I didn't I didn't like the story, the plot. I liked the writing. Uh, the next is another Russian novel. I think Pushkin. By the way, this is in. I don't know if this is actually a novel, as far as maybe it's like a really long poem. I have no idea. The next is F.E. Gladkov's Cement. This is a novel from the 20s, apparently. And this is, I'll just read the back here. I'd never heard of this novel before. Cement was Gladkov's greatest success, the first novel to delineate the life of the people in relation to the economic policies of the country. Gleb, the returning soldier hero, comes back to a world in painful transition and of a cement factory being reorganized for the massive national effort. His wife, Dasha, is now part of this dynamic new world where women have a unique place, and he finds that he cannot easily pick up the threads of their old relationship. Uh, This vivid, vigorous story of Soviet life in the early 20s has been hailed by critics here and abroad as one of the most notable pieces of fiction that has come out of Russia. So I have a lot of Russian novels that I keep telling myself I'm going to get to. I've liked the ones that I have read, but they're also, I find them overwhelming because they're very dramatic and they're very long usually. This one's not quite as long. And they're very oriented around like family and um, politics and that sort of thing usually. And I don't know, I just have to be in the right mindset to read something like that. But I saw this about a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, and I went back yesterday and I was hoping, kind of hoping that this was still there because I had been thinking about it. And I've never seen this before. So I figured I'd probably never see this again. And it sounds really interesting to me, so I just went ahead and picked it up. It was $1.59. And I did this unintentionally, but I guess I'm going to end on a sour note. This is like depressing, I guess. This is Annie Jacobsen's Nuclear War and Nuclear War, a Scenario. So this is how, basically how a nuclear war would start and how the events would unfold in different agencies around the world from start to finish. And I've read quite a few books like this, but none so contemporary. The ones that I've read have been from the 50s, the 60s, that sort of thing, the 70s even the 80s. I've read quite a bit about nuclear war in my day. It's to me, I find it a very dark but fascinating thing. I don't know. So yeah, if I had thought it through, I probably would have ended on a better note. So that is my book haul for today, and I want to thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time.